Hello everyone, back to you into the fourth Winter 2017-18 update from GWV.com. So we've had a month worth of updates now. We did the first update at the beginning of September. We have gone through September, of course. Now we're into October, 1st October today. 1 month worth of updates is gone. Got 2 more to go, and then eventually we're going to get to Sunday, the 3rd of December, when we will release the GWV.com Winter 2017-18 forecast. All of these updates are building up the picture, creating the storyline that we're going to develop through this season until we get to Sunday, the 3rd of December, and that's when we will release the forecast. Got a lot of updates to get through yet, though. We're not even halfway through with the updates, so plenty more to be looking at in the coming weeks and couple of months. The fourth update, today's update, is going to start exactly where the third update left off. We'll begin by looking at more analogues in terms of ENSO. The third update finished looking at La Nina analogues. This fourth update is going to look at ENSO neutral analogues. Once those are done, we're going to have a look at everything else. We'll have a look at oceans, have a look at solar activity, what's happened in the past couple of weeks in Siberian in terms of snow cover, and much more as well. So it's going to be a lot to cram in, and I have to get on with it in a second. But just to say that this is going to be a long video because we've got loads to cram in, so you can't watch it all in one go. Don't worry, you will be able to watch this video whenever you want. Around 7 o'clock this evening, it's going to be placed on the winter updates and forecast page. There'll be an extensive written report that goes with it as well, so you'll be able to come back and watch the video whenever you would like to, and also read that written report at any point that you would like to do that. That's going to be for around 7 o'clock this evening. But there's going to be a lot more going on at website day. Really big, epic day of updates. So as well as this fourth winter update, we've got Terry Scully, our good friend Terry, will be releasing his October forecast. That will be issued sometime around 5 o'clock this evening. Before that, around 2 o'clock this afternoon, we're going to issue the first update for Christmas. Can you believe we're going to begin to get the Christmas page out of mothballs, start getting it going, and that will be with you around 2 o'clock this afternoon, and there'll be more Christmas written updates. I have to emphasize that, written updates over the coming month, over October, and then in November we'll begin the video updates for Christmas. I know those are always enjoyed, or maybe not, by a lot of you. So going to be epic day of updates. Do keep checking back to the website for all the different updates that's going to be appearing through the course of today. But I think, because we've got a lot to cram in today, we better get on with that fourth Winter 17-18 update. As I said, we're going to start off by looking at analogues in terms of ENSO. So where we left off with the third update is that our good friend James Ackwill, and James is the guru of the analogues at GWV. He gets all the analogues together and then sends them to me to present in the videos, and a big thank you to James for doing that. I couldn't do these videos in terms of the analog side of it anyway without James's help and input. So as ever, a big thank you to from all of us to James. So just a quick recap on what we talked about in the third update. We had a look at Nino to neutral winters. So these were winters that were ENSO neutral, but they have been in La Nina. We have been in a La Nina state before those ENSO neutral winters, and this was almost a cold situation. So above average heights out to the northwest, south of Greenland, and the floating something like that. Not all that many to go at. That was the caveat. The sample was quite small, just 1, 2, 3, 4. And 5 winters to go at, but there were some colder winters in there. And then we also had a look at neutral, ENSO neutral to La Nina winter. These were La Nina winters, but from the proviso that they were ENSO neutral before, which is quite an unusual situation because normally La Nina, a cold event, follows an El Nino, a warm event. So to go from ENSO neutral to La Nina is quite unusual. A few more in the sample, but again, not a huge sample to go at, just 6 winters to go at then. And these ones were more anticyclonic, really. There were a few colder winters in there, but not all that many. This one was quite a anticyclonic sample, so a fairly dry sample, but again, not overly cold. So that brings us up to today's analogues. We've got more ENSO analogues to go, and a lot more for this sample. So what we're looking at for this fourth winter 1780 update is ENSO neutral winters, but they were ENSO neutral winters before the winter, if you like. So this is the whole year, essentially, but it's been ENSO neutral, and then you get to the winter, and it is still ENSO neutral. And for this, there's a lot more years to go. In fact, we have had a bit of a challenge to narrow this down. We will narrow it down once we've gone through the full analogues package. So the first winter we started with, that is an ENSO neutral all year winter, is the winter of 1871-1872, and this one, very unsettled winter, deep trough of below average heights out to the west of the UK and sending the flow and the jet stream through the country like that. That's a very wet winter and probably quite a mild one too. 1883, 1882, 1883 is our next one. Again, this one looks very unsettled, deep trough of below average heights to our west and doing something like that with the flow and with the jet stream. You have got a ridge over Scandinavia and Russia, but that's being forced way back by that really deep trough of low pressure that's in the Atlantic. That one looks mild and wet overall. The winter of 1883-1884 comes up next, and this one places above average heights to our south and also to the west of the country with below average heights up to north. This is a little bit different, but the jet stream is generally in a mild position, so this is generally quite a mild winter and probably quite a dry winter as well. The next winter is 1891-1892. This one looks very unsettled indeed, almost has a go at being a cold winter because we have got high pressure to the south of Greenland and also to the north, but I think overall, no, this is generally a very mild very wet signal for the winter. Not sure if it's overly mild, but certainly it is a wet and probably at times pretty mild winter. 1899 is next. 1898, 1899. This one also another very mild winter and also very wet. We have got a trend here already, quite evident, for these ENSO neutral winters following ENSO neutral condition all year, for these winters to be very unsettled. And this is another mild and wet winter that we see here in 1899. 1901, 1902 comes up next. This one has a go at being a cold winter. We've got below average heights through the UK and doing something like that, above average heights to the south of Greenland. Not all that far away from being a cold winter. I think at times the winter of 1901, 1902 did have some cold snaps. It wasn't a desperately cold winter by any means, but at times perhaps it was a little bit more on the seasonable side. Again, very unsettled signal though, below average heights really around much of northern and western Europe too. 1907, 1908 comes next. This one has above average heights in the Atlantic, a bit of a mid-Atlantic ridge, and then below average heights generally to the south and east. So that one has a go at being a little bit on the colder side as well. I don't think it was overly cold by any means, but perhaps a few cold snaps. And there was a very potent, very late cold snap that occurred at the end of April 1908, quite interestingly. 1920, 1921 comes up next. This one looks like an area of above average heights around much of Europe, really. Otherwise, not much else going on. Quite an unusual looking pattern with this one. I think it was quite a mild winter of 1920, 1921, probably a little bit on the drier side. Then we go to 1922. So this is going from 1920-21 to 1921-1922. This one also is another mild winter and quite a wet winter as well, doing something like that with the flow and with the jet stream. We go through to 1923, so quite a few of these ENSO neutral winters following ENSO neutral all year before. And again, we see that another unsettled looking winter, below average heights coming through the UK and to the south, doing something a bit like that. Flow and with the jet stream. That's another Atlantic driven mild and wet winter in 1923. 1928 comes up next, 27-28. So this one, generally quite a mild winter with below average heights to our west. However, December 1927 is quite interesting because that was cold. It did have a fabulously snowy Christmas, interestingly, in 1927. But the winter overall, and you can see a little bit of that by way of this area of above average heights over Scandinavia, but the winter overall was generally a mild winter in 1927, 1928. Then we go through 1928, 1929. So loads of these winters appearing in the 1920s, interestingly. And this is our first cold winter that we've seen. This is a genuinely cold winter with above average heights to the north, and doing something like that with the flow, so bringing wind in from the east. That was one of the few really cold winters that occurred before 1940. There weren't many of them, around 4 or 5. That's one of them. 1928, 1929, bitterly cold winter. 1929-30 looks very different. This one obviously is back to the idea of being very unsettled, very wet, doing something like that, with flowing with the jet stream, the winter of 1930. 1933 is next, 32-33. I think this has cropped up in the analogues that we've looked at before in these updates. This one bringing quite a lot of dry weather, was a drier winter and not overly cold, some cooler snaps going through at times. 1936 comes up next. This one, really deep trough of below average heights around the UK and in the Atlantic, doing something like that with flow, with projection. It has got a lot of blocking, interestingly, in winter of 1935, 1936. Loads of high pressure up here, very, very close to being a really cold winter, but just didn't quite turn out right. And in fact, it was just a mild and wet winter, really, in 1935, 1936. 1937 comes up next. This one just generally quite unsettled and mild again, doing something like that with flow and with the jet stream. 1938, quite an interesting run there. 1936, 1937, 1938. This one looks a bit more interesting. Winter of 37, 38 did have a go at bringing in some colder snaps. I don't think it's remembered as a particularly cold winter, but certainly not all that far away from it. Of course, December 1938 did go really cold. And again, another white Christmas in December 1938. That's not relevant to this. This is the winter of 37 and 38. Then we've got 1945. This is a coolish winter, particularly January 1945. Had quite a cold snap. We have above average heights out to west and also going to the north with below average heights to the east. A lot of northerly winds during January 1945 at the end of the Second World War. This is a big one. 46-47 is in our analogues package. I'm sure that has got your attention. We've got below average heights to our south and vast blocking up to the north. Look at all that blocking that we've got going on to the north, and of course that has the effect of pulling in the air from the east and the northeast like that. We know it was a late starter in 1947, but my word, when it got going, did we know about it. Late January, February, and well into March, severely cold and very snowy as well in 1947. That's a big one that's appeared there. 1948 comes through next, so again, interesting run. 46, 47, and then 1947, 1948. Totally different winter in 1948 to one that went before it. This one is just very wet and mild. Did have a go, again, a little bit of high pressure to the north, but compared to the winter before in 1947, that looks very mediocre, and just a very mild and wet winter in 1948. 1949 appears then, so it does appear that these years, these ENSO neutral winters that follow on from ENSO neutral condition all year, does appear that these winters can occur in blocks of 2 or 3, quite interestingly, because we've had a run again there from 47 through 48 through to 49. This one, winter of 48-49, is another late, a mild late 1940s winter with the flow going something a bit like that. That's a drier one there in 1949. Where do we go next? We go to 1950. 61, and this is how things are looking in 1961. A big area of below average heights to our northwest, and to our west is having a go at getting colder over towards the east with high pressure across Eastern Europe, but really it's the Atlantic that's driving in. So this is one of the few properly mild winters, actually, the winter of 1960, 1961 in the 1960s. 1960s has a lot of cold winters, but this is one of the milder ones that occurs. Then we've got 1962 appearing. So again, it looks like I have another run. 60, 61, and then 61, 62. This one has above average heights. What am I doing there? It has above average heights out to the northwest, below average heights to the east. Has a go at being a cold winter. It isn't really remembered as a cold winter, but did have some quite potent cold snaps, and one of those occurred through the course of Christmas 1961 into the start of 1962, and then again March 1962 was very cold. Now this is another interesting one, so very interesting, within this package of analogues, and it's not an overly cold package of analogues by any means, but within this package of analogues, there are some very, very big winters. We've got 1929, we've got 1947, and now we've got another massive winter, 1963. This one, we know what happened with this one. Look at all this blocking up to the north, with winter 62, 63, with the below average heights to the south, and it was a very severely cold winter, the coldest winter since 1740 in 1963. Then we go through to another very interesting winter, 81, 82 is appearing. So again, we've got the below average heights to the south of the UK, the above average heights are there to the north. And quite an interesting winter, 81, 82, because very cold start up to the middle of January, very cold, but then the second half of the winter turned mild. So that's why the anomaly for winter overall probably doesn't look all that extreme, but the first half of winter was jolly cold, to say the least. 1991 is appearing next. Now, this is another cold winter. So as we've got closer to where we are in 2017, actually these winters have got significantly more interest, because this is another very cold winter appearing. It wasn't very cold, but it did have a very cold spell. So we have the below average heights out to our west, above average heights over Scandinavia, and generally the wind and the flow was from the southeast. Now this winter was generally quite mild to start off with, did things the other way around, really, to 81, 82. This one, 1991, was quite mild in the first part of winter, but it got much colder later, with a very severe cold spell occurring in February of 1991. Then we come through to our last ENSO neutral winter, following ENSO neutral all year, and it's 2013-2014. Excuse me, and we know what happened with this one, extraordinarily wet. So now, after all those very interesting winters that we've just gone through, such as 47, 63, 81, 82, 1991, after all those colder winters, we've gone back to that idea that's in the analogues package in the earlier winters, just being very unsettled, very Atlantic driven. So this, we know, 2013-14 was a very, very wet winter. Indeed, it had a strong ridge around the Azores, had quite a lot of northern blocking, but it was all in the wrong place. It brought the cold down into America. That cold blew up the jet stream, and then the cyclogenesis coming across the Atlantic. I've gone crazy there with the high. Let's get rid of all of that. Had the blocking up here, forces the cold air down into America. The cold air runs out of America into the Atlantic, and then it blows up around here and we get this exceptionally wet and stormy winter in 2013 and 2014 as well. So a real mixed bag of winters there. There are some very interesting winters within the analogues package, but a real mixed bag. Now, James has had a go at trying to narrow this down, because obviously there are a lot of winters there that we've just gone through. So James has tried to narrow this down into the winters that are probably going to be most, in terms of ENSO neutral, probably going to be most like this winter. And those winters come out as 1882, 1883, 1891. Notice all a long time ago, 1922, 1932, 1944. And the nearest one to 2017, just there, is actually 1961, very long time ago. If you combine all of those years together, this is the analogue package that you come out with, and it is an unsettled signal with the below average heights in to the west of Europe. Have got a bit of a blocking signal up here to the northeast, but looks like it's the Atlantic that is driving the flow. So these analogues, we think, most favour unsettled, mild Atlantic-driven conditions that are winter, these ENSO-neutral analogues. But obviously, we can't discount the fact that there are a lot of, not a lot, but there are several really interesting winters in there from a cold perspective. If you're getting winters such as 1929, 1947, 1963, 1981, 82, and then 1990, 1991. You get 6 winters within your analogues package cropping up that are as cold as those winters were, then it does make you sit up and take notice. But we think, narrowing it down a little bit, that it probably is more of a signal to be mild and unsettled overall. So that's the analogues dealt with for this 4th update, and now we're going to move on and have a look at the rest of the GWV Winter methodology. But before I do that, I might just go have a little sip of water while it gets out of a cup of tea, and we'll meet back in around 2 seconds from now. Okay, and we're back for the second part of the 4th Winter 2017-18 update from GWV.com. We just went through 20 minutes worth of really interesting analogues, and now we're going to move on, have a look at the rest of the GWV methodology. So we're going to carry on really looking at the oceans, but not also focusing on the ENSO region, although that's an important part. We'll also have a look at the Northern Pacific and also the Atlantic Ocean as well. So this is the chart that we used from NOAA in terms of the sea surface temperature anomalies back when we did the 3rd update, which we did a couple of weeks ago. Of course, we had a layoff last week when we did the first seasonal model roundup. So you have to keep in mind that this is our first winter update that we've done for a couple of weeks. And so some fairly significant changes might have taken place. So this is how things were looking in the oceans 2 weeks ago when we did the 3rd winter update. So we've got the ENSO region over here, which is Peru to Indonesia. We had a little bit of a La Nina signal then. The northeastern part of the Pacific Ocean was looking quite cool up towards Alaska, and then in the Atlantic, so quite an unusual pattern. Got warm sea surface temperature anomalies just here, quite warm also up here, and then a little bit cooler just here. So perhaps not all that far from a tripole when we did the 2nd winter. When we did the 3rd, I should say, winter 2017-18 update. Let's have a look at the very latest now. The very latest chart looks like this. And let's deal with the ENSO region first of all. So that's how the ENSO region was looking when we did the 3rd update a couple of weeks ago. This is how the ENSO region is looking now, and quite clearly it is cooling down very significantly, particularly in the eastern portion of the ENSO region. So this area just here has now quite a significant, you have to say it's quite a significant La Nina signal. It hasn't yet really progressed into this central part of the equatorial Pacific, but I assume this is going to go only one way, and I think we're going towards La Nina at quite a rapid rate now. That's certainly how it appears to be shaping up. Notice all this cold water still there, cold sea surface temperature anomaly still here off the coast of Peru. This is very unusual what's happening this year. I have to emphasize this is a really unusual development to get such a late surge as we see here towards a cold event towards La Nina, but that is certainly appearing to be the way that things are going. At the moment, we're still kind of like on the weak side of La Nina, but to be honest, we are very rapidly moving, I think, at least at the eastern portion of the ENSO region, anyway, this area over towards Peru. I think we're very rapidly moving towards a generally quite a moderate sort of La Nina signal. Very unusual. And despite those ENSO years that we're just looking at, the ENSO neutral years we're just looking at, I've got a feeling it's the La Nina years that we've got to concentrate on for this winter now. It is still possible it'll be an ENSO neutral winter, but to me that is looking very strikingly like we are very likely to have a La Nina, a cold event for the winter of 2017-2018. So we did have a look at those ENSO neutral analogues a few minutes ago, but I do think it's probably going to be the La Nina analogues that we've got to concentrate on. We'll have more about this, of course, in the coming updates. In the northern part of the Pacific Ocean, looks like things have warmed up a little bit over towards Alaska, actually. So that's how things were looking a couple of weeks ago. This is how things are looking up there now. Definite warming has taken place, and this has been a feature over the past few winters, actually. This is normally quite a cold place. You normally get fairly cold sea surface temperature anomalies up here off the coast of Alaska and the Pacific coast of Canada. So it's quite unusual. Excuse me, it is quite unusual what we're seeing here again, warming beginning to take place, and that's perhaps not such a good signal for anybody wanting a cold winter. Let's come over into the Atlantic. Again, quite an unusual pattern, still looking fairly warm down here through the tropical part of the Atlantic Ocean. This central area has warmed a little bit, if anything. So I think we probably lost a tiny bit that tripole signal that we thought was getting last week, a couple of weeks ago. And even then, it wasn't really a classic tripole signature anyway. But I think we probably lost that a little bit over the past couple of weeks. However, it is still quite striking that the tropical Atlantic is warmer than average down here. We're also fairly warm, you have to say, up here. And generally, just the North Atlantic appears to be in quite a warmish sort of state this year. I want to draw your attention over to here, the sea surface temperature anomalies from Iceland, just there over towards Scandinavia here. They are looking very significantly warmer than average. I'm not sure what's responsible for that. Quite an unusual place to see it as warm as that with those sea surface temperature anomalies. And what I'm going to have to do is have a look back through the archives of NOAA and see if I can come up with some winters that had extensive above average sea surface temperature anomalies up there. But overall, I like to see, actually I quite like to see this area colder than average, and then I quite like to see this area warmer than average. So I prefer to see that, the warm sea surface temperature anomalies to the south of Greenland, and this area to be colder. So it looks like we're doing things a little bit the other way around, if anything, for this year. It is unusual to have the sea surface temperature anomalies that warm up there between Iceland and Scandinavia. And as I say, I'm going to have a look back through the archives, see if I can come up with some years that had sea surface temperature anomalies as warm as that. Generally, very unusual condition through both of the oceans this year. The Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, they're both looking really quite unusual with their patterns this year. And specifically and particularly in relation, can't keep emphasising this enough, but it is very unusual the way that we have swung really late in the year into this La Nina signal, when you think that previously it did look as though we were going to be odds on for an El Nino, if anything. CFSV2 continues to forecast a moderate La Nina event to occur, so we've got the dates along the bottom here. We've got the temperature anomalies, sea surface temperature anomalies on the side. The black dash line is the ensemble mean, so it's going down to around minus 1.5 in terms of the sea surface temperature anomaly through the central equatorial Pacific by sort of the end of the year in sort of 2018. That is solid La Nina territory. Weak to moderate La Nina being predicted by CFSV2. Notice one or two ensemble members are actually going down into either a strong or possibly even a very strong La Nina by the end of the year. Those are outliers. I don't think they'll verify. I think we'll be up here, but it does look like a solid La Nina signal, and certainly much more of a La Nina signal, again, very interestingly, compared to last year, because last year it did look at one time as though we would have a moderate La Nina, and it just got downgraded and downgraded and downgraded as we went along. We finished up with one of the weakest La Ninas ever recorded. This year, La Nina was not expected, but it looks like we're swinging very quickly and rapidly into a moderate La Nina event. Really unusual situation. Solar activity next. So this is the solar disk on our side of the disk today from solarham.net. We have got sunspots, although solar activity at Solarham is officially designated as being at very low levels. This is the GWV Winter Update Solar Activity Tracker, just updated by James Ackrill, our good friend James, up to the 30th of September. So September's been a really interesting month for solar activity. We had that big ramp up, big spike in activity at the start of the month, then a crash occurred down there. And now we stayed at generally quite lowish levels, although we have crept up a little bit actually over the past few days in terms of those sunspot numbers. It means that the trend lines are now flatlining. So when we had this big spike, all the trends, the thick green and the thick red lines, they were pushing upwards very dramatically. Then they lowered, dropped off. But now, because activity, again, sunspot activity has crept up a little bit over the past week, the trend lines are just kind of flatlining away. That drop that occurred just there has not been sustained. And overall, because the trend lines are sort of flatlining now, overall we are still significantly above where we was, even going back really with the trends into the end of last year. We can go back with the tracker to December 2016 over here, and you can see where the thick green, thick red trend lines were then. And so we get this big spike in the trends just here. And because activity has crept up and the trend lines have flattened off from their drop that occurred just there, we are still significantly above with the trend, the whole of 2017 so far in terms of solar activity. I think very quickly we're going to see these trend lines reducing and going back to this sort of level. I can't believe we can sustain, given how far we are into the solar cycle, how close to solar minimum we are now. Remember, solar minimum is expected around 18 months' time. So given how close we are to solar minimum now, I can't believe we're going to be able to sustain these trends at this sort of level for all that much longer. I think very soon we've got to get a crash and go back down to this kind of level with those sunspot trends. We'll keep you posted with the GWV Winter Updates for Activity Tracker through the next few weeks with the remainder of the winter updates. QBO next, not much to add on this because we haven't got September's number in yet for the QBO. We know we're descending into an easterly QBO. We started off in 2017 westerly with the QBO. Westerly QBO means that your zonal winds in the northern hemisphere are strengthened, so a westerly QBO tends to be a signal for a milder Atlantic driven winter, and an easterly QBO it means the zonal winds in the northern hemisphere are weakened, and sometimes that can coincide with a colder winter flow. Not that straightforward. Anyway, we start off at the beginning of 2017 with a westerly QBO, quite positive with those numbers. We have a big switch that occurs just here, and then last month we can go to August with the QBO on this chart. August QBO comes out at minus 14.42. That's solid descent into an easterly QBO type territory. And once September's number comes in, and September's number will be placed here at some time in the next few days, September's number should come out more negative than August number. So we should come out with a more negative number than minus 14.42. And hopefully we'll be able to fill that in for you next week. You'll be able to see that the descent into the easterly QBO continues. Interestingly, next week we're going to have some analogues for easterly QBO winters, and particularly transitioning easterly QBO winters, so winters that are going into an easterly QBO. So you'll be able to see, there's been a lot of speculation about the easterly QBO for several years. You'll be able to see just what the evidence is next week's 5th Winter 17-18 update in terms of an easterly QBO. How much does that favour a colder winter? You'll find out next week. That one is going to be one that's worth waiting for. Atlantic hurricane season next. So remember, it's been a couple of weeks since we did the last winter update. So our numbers look like this now. This is the hurricane season for 2017 at Wikipedia. Total depressions stand at 14. Total storms stand at 13. Hurricanes stand at 8. And major category 3 or above hurricanes stand at 5. Have 5 of those. And that compares with the update we did a couple of weeks ago. So total storms haven't changed. It was 14 2 weeks ago. It's still 14. Total storms, they are at 13 now. That's up 1 from 12 when we did the 3rd winter update 2 weeks ago. Total hurricanes standing at 8. That's up 2 from the 3rd winter update, so that's gone up 2. And major category 3 or above hurricanes standing at 5. Again, that has gone up. 2 from the 3rd update. So clearly the 2017 hurricane season is continuing to deliver storms and hurricanes. And the idea behind this is that we get lots of storms and hurricanes coming out of the tropics. They transport their heat northwards and disperse it across the northern hemisphere. Eventually that heat will finish up in the polar region, and you get lots of heat being dumped in the polar region via storms and hurricanes. It can sometimes translate to an increased risk of northern blocking. We'll continue to monitor the hurricane season through the remainder of October and into November as well. And then finally, we're going to have a look at Siberian snow cover and Arctic sea ice. So we know, we dealt with this in the 3rd update, so I won't talk about it much more, but we've got Arctic sea ice up here, and it is now starting to recover. It's starting to refreeze. The refreeze is occurring in the Arctic. A little bit slower, perhaps, than the last few years, but it is underway. We reached our minimum in terms of Arctic sea ice extent back in the earlier part of September, and the refreeze is now well underway. More interestingly is what's happening across eastern parts of Russia and Siberia. We've had quite a lot of snow cover appearing. We've got quite a lot of snow cover appearing now in this eastern portion of Siberia, and also into Russia as well. Over the next sort of 4 or 5 weeks, we're going to find all of this area from western Russia here over towards Siberia here. All of this area will fill up with snow. We'd like to see how quickly that happens, because how quickly this snow line pushes west and eventually finishes up into Scandinavia can have an impact on the strength of the Siberian high. If you get snow cover appearing early across Siberia through feedback mechanism, that snow cover can translate into a stronger than average Siberian high. Now, just because you get a Siberian high, it's not a guarantee of anything, because the Siberian high can go two ways. Obviously, the Siberian high can go that way. It can push its way into Western Russia and then maybe send an extension into Scandinavia. Then possibly, if everything goes well, bring in easterly winds to the west of Europe into British Isles. So that's one way the Siberian high can go. But the other way the Siberian high can go is actually over the top of the Arctic and then down into Canada, which is over here, of course. That's Canada over there. And if the Siberian high goes that way, what it's going to do is going to take all of that Siberian and Arctic air and push it down into Canada, and then eventually going to arrive in America. And that's exactly what happened in the winter of 2013-2014, when we had lots of cold air drawn down into America that exploded into cyclogenesis in the Atlantic. And the upshot of having such a strong Siberian high as we had in 2013-14, we did have a very strong Siberian high. The upshot of it was that we finished up with a really, really mild winter, because the cold air coming out of America blew up over the Atlantic Ocean. It exploded cyclogenesis into life, and that gave us that rotten, wet and stormy winter of 2013-2014. So it's not a guarantee of anything. We include it because it will tell you sometimes, get snow cover appearing early, it will tell you that the Siberian high could be stronger than average, and that's in itself quite important, but it is by no means a guarantee to getting cold weather. Let's just compare finally this year going back to 1998. So this was the situation on the 29th of September this year, just a reminder of that. This is how things were looking on the 29th of September in 1998. I think we're roughly on a par actually with 1998 at the moment. 1999, that's how things were looking on this day in 1999, probably above 1999, if anything. We're above 2000 as well at this point, and 2001. We've got more snow cover now than we did at this point in 2001. Probably on a par with 2002. What do we think? It's a little bit different, slightly different areas, but overall coverage is probably close this year at this point to 2002. Way above 2003, hardly anything across Siberia at this point in 2003 and 2004 and 2005 and 2006. So we are way above all of those years in terms of snow cover right now in eastern parts of Russia. 2007, we're above 2007 and above 2008 and above 2009 as well. 2010, well, in slightly different positions, but probably on a par or maybe slightly greater in terms of snow cover right now to 2010, but probably not all that much in it. We're above 2011 and 2012. That's 2013. And I think 2013 probably has greater snow coverage actually at this point than we see now. Remember, 2013-2014 is a very mild and stormy winter for the UK and for Europe, and it is at least partly down to the fact that the Siberian high was strengthened. It was a very strong Siberian high from all of this snow cover that occurred really early in the snow cover season in 2013. But that Siberian high pushed over the Arctic into Canada and delivered all of the cold air down into America. 2014, another very good year for snow cover, and again, if we compare right now 2014, we're probably below 2014. 2015, so what do we think? I think probably a little bit above 2015, and then that brings us to last year, 2016. This was a situation at this point in 2016, in fact, just a change with David, it shouldn't make too much difference. So this is, that would just make quite a big difference. So this is the situation on this day in 2016 compared to now, and we're probably under 2016 as well. So I think we are under 2013, we're under 2014, and we're under 2016. Otherwise, we're probably doing better in terms of snow cover than any other year that we've looked at, perhaps on a par with 2002 and 2010, maybe on a par with 1998 as well. Still very early days for this. It's more impactful through October to see how quickly this snow cover spreads into Central and Western Europe and also into Scandinavia as well. So we'll continue to monitor it throughout the whole of the winter updates during October. And that's it. We have arrived at the end of the 4th Winter 2017-18 update at 45 minutes, which included a little bit of a tea break as well. So I hope you found the video interesting and informative. Sort of really fascinating stuff, and I still don't really know where this winter is going to go. I have to confess, a lot of people ask me what do I think is going to happen for the winter when we get to this time of year, and the honest answer, particularly this year, is that I really don't know. I haven't got any idea, actually, at this stage, how this is all going to play out. There's a few little things whirling away in the back of my mind, but to be honest, I couldn't issue a forecast for this winter at this point. We've got to do many more updates. We've got to see how things play out over the course of the next few weeks. And eventually I will have to issue that winter forecast, of course, on the 3rd of December. There's no getting away from it. There will be winter forecast from GWV.com. I'm going to have to come up with something. But at this point, I'm scratching my head a little bit. So anyway, that's the 4th update done and dusted. We'll have the 5th update for you next week. And I say that was specifically going to focus, well, it'll focus on all of this, but specifically it's focusing on the QBO and seeing what impact that descent into the Eastern QBO could have for this winter. I think that's going to be a really interesting one. So do come back for the 5th update next week. There's been lots of speculation for a long time, many years, over the QBO and what impacts it can have. We will try and answer some of those questions for you through reanalysis and analogues for the 5th winter update next week. So, see you same time, same place then. But before that, lots of updates coming up at GWV today. Terry Scully's October forecast will be released this evening. And also, this afternoon, around 2 o'clock, we'll get the Christmas updates page underway as well. Remember, this video is going to be placed on the Winter 2017-18 updates and forecast page with an extensive written report. That will be probably around 7 o'clock this evening, but at almost dead on 47 minutes. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.